Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. On today's episode, I will be targeting bass from the banks of Folsom Lake prior to a storm moving in later this afternoon. I do however want to address an issue that had been popping up on this channel, and that is in regards to the YouTube shorts on this channel. Folsom Lake is rising rapidly, so the goal today is to target this newly submerged vegetation. There are all three phases of bass currently right now in Folsom Lake. We still have some pre-spawn fish, some spawning fish, and some post-spawn fish. Starting off the day, I'll be tossing a jackal flick-shaped worm on a wacky style jig head. The water is warming up rapidly despite a storm moving in later this afternoon. It is scheduled to pour, so I'm going to try and catch a few fish and get out of here before it really downpours later on. I ended up getting a bite, and I knew right away I caught myself a dinky spotted bass. There are a ton of these dinky spotted bass up in this newly submerged vegetation, so I'm going to try and weed through these fish to see if I can catch some bigger fish. This is about the typical size of bass that will be moving up into this newly submerged structure. He's not big, but I'll toss him back. I picked up my casting rod and decided to toss a jerkbait. I want to try and see if I can get this jerkbait away from these dinky fish, and maybe there's a bigger fish around. I am using Megabass 110, and with this Megabass 110 all I'll do is just rip it ever so slightly. However, these dinky fish were so fierce that I'm trying to rip it away from them. Somehow, while trying to rip this jerkbait away from the dinky fish, one of the dinky spotted bass managed to hook himself. The storm is moving in fast, so by using a jerkbait I'm able to quickly locate fish, and when I do locate some better fish, I'm going to slow down and try and pick it apart with some much more finesse technique. So now on to the topic I really want to address on this episode, and that has to do with the YouTube shorts. On this channel, I am very blessed to have the vast majority of my subscribers and viewers well above the age of 30. By that definition, the vast majority of folks who watch my channel will be grouped in either baby boomers, Generation X, or millennials. However, the landscape of YouTube fishing content is changing. As the cohorts of baby boomers and Generation X slowly disappears, my cohort, the millennials, and the Generation Zs will become the main demographic on YouTube and social media in general, and afterwards, it will be Generation Alpha. So some folks might be wondering, what does this have to do with the YouTube shorts? Well, for many whom are in the loop of content curation, the average lifespan of a YouTube channel is anywhere from 2 to 5 years. My channel alone had been on YouTube for over 3.5 years now. When I first moved over from an Eastern social media platform to this Western social media platform, I immediately recognized that the other two major social media platforms such as TikTok and Instagram, the short-form content offered by these other social media platforms are a definite powerhouse to be reckoned with. Gone are the days where a fishing content creator can simply post a long-form video and leave it there weeks on end without posting any more content. The social media algorithm, whether you're on YouTube, TikTok, or even Instagram, demands that a content creator constantly post and feed the algorithm. Without the constant post, there is little to no traffic to a channel. Whether you love them or you hate them, short-form content are here to stay. As the demographics of this country shift, even some of the larger fishing content creators have complete libraries of shorts catering to this much younger generation. And who is that generation, some of you guys might be asking? Well, that generation will be Generation Z. They will be the generation that will soon be the backbone of this country, and they are also the generation that have grown up entirely with technology at their fingertips. Unlike the baby boomers, or the Generation X, or even my generation, the millennials, who grew up with very little technology, Generation Z, or Gen Zs as they call it, had grown up with completely established social media platforms, whether it be YouTube, Instagram, or TikTok. I'm not bashing the Gen Zs, but there is something inherently different about them, unlike previous generations that had come before them. One of the biggest differences about this generation is just simply their lack of attention span. I can have an entire episode posted with the location, baits, rigs, and tackle, and this generation, Gen Zs, will still ask me the same questions found in the beginning of the episode because a large portion of them really just don't have the same kind of attention span a lot of the older subscribers do. Of course, a lot of content creators recognize the changes in the landscape on social media and thus had adopted short-form content as a means to reach out to the soon-to-be backbone of this country. Every shorts on this channel is built to present a subject as quickly as possible without the nuances of watching a complete episode. As many folks who watch my content may have recognized, none of my shorts uses footages from the main episodes. That often leads to a lot of my subscribers and viewers often asking if I can make a full-length episode based on the subjects presented in the YouTube shorts. For the most part, some of my episodes are actually based around some of the subjects I present in my YouTube shorts. But for the most part, I would much rather prefer to keep my shorts and my full episodes completely separate because both subjects are catering to completely different demographics. So hopefully this mini episode explains why short form content are here to stay, especially as this country's demographic shifts and the cohorts of baby boomers and Gen Xers slowly disappears from the landscape of social media. It is the changing of the guards or the handing of the keys to the next generation. Call it whatever you will, but with social media, we are watching it happen on live time. So with that all being said, let's get back to the fishing. On this particular area, I have some flooded timber in front of me. It's not particularly deep, roughly about 5 to 7 feet, and that's all it takes for these fish to move up on this freshly submerged timber and vegetation. I have a drop shot which I had fired out to the base of the timber line, and I'm just slowly shaking it there to see if I find a fish that is interested. I ended up getting a bite, and this gave me the telltale sign that I caught myself a much better spotted bass. The storm is moving in fast, and I'm going to try and see if I can catch a few more fish before calling it quits for the day. It is going to pour real soon, and I really don't want to be caught out here as it starts thunderstorming and raining. Spring here in Northern California can bring some very erratic weather. We were quite warm for about a month, and with this storm pushing through, I believe the temperatures will drop quite a bit, which can often hold the spring growing session off and keep the bites going strong. Some folks might disagree and say that with the cold front moving through, it'll put the bite off, but in my opinion, if it keeps the water cool and doesn't warm up too fast, we can have a great spring bite all the way into May. This was a very healthy Folsom Lake cookie cutter spotted bass. I'll show him to you guys, and I'll let him go. I ended up spotting a very nice largemouth bass in this very clear water next to the timber pile. I believe this fish was actually chasing some Japanese pond smelts because the pond smelts were up thick around this vegetation for some strange reason. Despite the storm rolling in fast, these fish were actively feeding and they were quite in a frenzy. I have a 4.5-inch roboworm on, and I'm just going to try and shake it there very slowly to see if I can tempt its interest to come over and break it away from the pond smelts. I finally got this fish to commit, and to my surprise, this was a very nice largemouth bass. Typically, there would be a lot much more spotted bass in this freshly flooded timber piles and vegetation rather than largemouth bass, but I am very happy and pleased that I managed to hook into this fish. A lot of anglers will often dismiss these very shallow water as the lake begins to rise, but in my opinion, what they're doing is they're actually missing out on some of the best bites. I know a lot of anglers this time of year will often look for a hard structure, but in my opinion, this freshly flooded vegetation can actually be quite productive if an angler were willing to break it apart. This was a very healthy largemouth bass, and I'll show him to you guys real quick before returning him back to the water. Alright buddy, rest up a bit, and off you go. So it is starting to sprinkle now, but I noticed that there was another fish out a little bit further past the tree line that was busting on some Japanese pond smelt. I don't have a top water, so all I'll do is fire this drop shot out as far as I can to where I've seen that fish busting, and I'm just going to shake it there. The goal is to see whether or not that fish is interested, and if he is willing to pick up the robo worm. Surprisingly, he did pick it up right away. At first I thought I caught myself another spotted bass, but as it begins to surface, I noticed that it was another largemouth bass. Folsom Lake is rising rapidly. I believe after this storm, this reservoir might be up a few more feet, and the carp might be done spawning real soon. I might be able to get a carp campaign out on this reservoir if the fish would quit spawning anytime now. There are some channel catfish up and moving around, but the reservoir keeps rising, so they're not up in numbers yet. If we get some stable water levels, there will be quite a handful of channel catfish that can be caught in the shallows as well. But for now, Folsom Lake is primarily a trout and bass fishery for the time being. This was another very nice little largemouth bass. Alright buddy, thanks for playing, and off you go. Overall, it was just a beautiful little morning session out here on Folsom Lake. I caught a handful of fish for the camera, but most of all, thank you guys for watching, and until next time, tight lines y'all.